Thank you, everyone, for joining the session. And now we are going to start with the first spotlight session for day one, where we are going to talk about the policies and regulations in the emerging business environment. And to start the session, may I call upon Shri Nath from Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas as the session chairman. May I also call upon the esteemed panelists for the discussion. Dr. Anand Gupta, the Additional Director General in Directorate General of Hydrocarbonate under Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas. We welcome you, sir. Shri R.K. Dhasmana, the Exploration Manager at Krishna Godavari Basin of ONGC. We welcome you, sir. Shri Rajiv Kumar, the Vice President, Business Development and Integration, RCNS, for the British Petroleum Region, a subsidiary of the British Petroleum PLC. We welcome you, sir. Shri Pinkadharan Mohapatra, Director Exploration and Subsurface at Antelopes Energy. Thank you so much for joining. And I would also now like to welcome Shri Sanjay Chawla, who is going to be the session co-chair. He is currently the Executive Director and Chief ExCom at ONGC. He is supervising exploration, contract monitoring, and acquisition of new acreage. And prior to ExCom, he was the Chief JVOG, supervising joint venture, oil and gas field operations under production sharing contract for various pre-NELP books. Thank you so much, sir, for joining in. And may I now call upon the session co-chair, Shri Sanjay Chawla, to commence the session.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Chandrima. Respected chair of the session, Shri Amar, the Joint Secretary, Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas, the learned speakers from DGH and industry, and dear friends who are present through the virtual mode. So, just briefly, I'll give about the overview of the sessions. This is the first spotlight session, which is the policies and regulation in the emerging business environment. As you all are aware, friends, that industry at present is facing various challenges such as volatile prices, geopolitical uncertainties, consumer preferences, and supply-demand dynamics. However, if we look at the Indian basins, we have around 41 billion ton, around 300 million barrels of oil equivalent of the resource, out of which around 12 billion ton has been established. So there is a huge opportunity still left for the E&P players. Now, but in order to sustain these challenges as well as to look for these opportunities, we need to have the policies and regulation will play an important role under such scenario. So therefore, this session will not only focus on the existing policies, but also on the areas where policy is required. Since we have the expert panel, expert speakers from the DGH and from the industry. So what are the policies are there? What has been brought down in the last 4 or 5 years? What are the demands? What are the challenges industry is facing? So all these aspects we will be discussing in this particular session. So it is my privilege to first introduce the chairman of this session, Shri Amanaji, Joint Secretary Exploration, who is a well-known face, who has brought in a lot of policy changes in the last few years in terms of OLP and many others. In the opening session also, we were discussing what are the changes have been brought in by ministry. In the last few years, the focus has changed from revenue to the production and the exploration. So I think very, very briefly, I'll give an overview about the chairman. He's a 1994 IS cadre, and he did his engineering graduation from Kurukshetra University, and he did his master from Duke University, USA. Shri Amarnathji is well known to industry players, so I'll not take much time. So I'll request Shri Amarnathji to say a few words and declare the session open, and then we'll go to the different speakers. Thank you. Now it is over to you, sir.
Good morning to all of you, and thank you very much for introducing. The policy response in recent years has also become challenging, like the industry. The government has brought a lot of policy reforms, but continuously there is a change in the environment. The oil and gas sector itself is facing challenges. Climate issues are also impinging on the working, and there are changing which are happening in the society. People's preferences are changing, the demands and assertion of the people are changing. Sorry, the on this online session also have challenges, so you have to. So I was mentioning that society is also changing, and the technology is also putting a lot of pressure. Like we have our own systems, like you have WhatsApp and Twitter, and now we in India also we have brought this coup. If you have noticed recently, that all these things are basically making the change in the existing systems, and that is putting pressure on the business models of the companies. Now, established business models, they may not work. We will have to come out with the new business models. And in response to all these things, the policy itself has become challenging. How do we respond quickly to the policy changes? The old system that the government used to take a lot of time, and once implemented, subsequently the policies become like cast on stone. So those issues will become very, very difficult for the governments to manage. So we are also grappling with this, that how do we make quick changes? At the same time, how do we ensure that a governance takes place? If you see recently in the budget, one of the 6 pillars is that minimum government, maximum governance. Now, government doesn't want day-to-day operational control or interference, but at the same time, how do you ensure that a thing which has been prescribed is complied with? So environmental issues are becoming extremely important. Social issues are becoming extremely important. So it is in this context that we are responding in framing our policies. And as all of you know, that ease of doing business has become one of the hallmark of the government. Then how do we make it easier for the people? If a approval is required, why it takes long time? When a digital system is there, why not approvals can become instant? But how do we do this? We in the government also don't have policy models. So we also need to innovate and think. And I think sessions like these will help a lot in coming together and finding out solutions that while complying with the government regulations, while complying with the objectives of the governance, how we conduct the business so that it is easier, smooth, how does it have social license, how does it has environmental license. All these things need to be worked together and solutions need to be found. So I think this session should help us in guiding that working together, the solutions could be found and E&P sector can become one of the most vibrant sectors in the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. So now we'll start with the first presenter. So the first presentation is from Dr. Anand Gupta. I'll just read out his brief biodata. He is currently holding the post of Additional Director General Development at DGH under Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas. He did his bachelor from IIT Roorkee, MTech from ISM Dhanbad, MBA in finance from IGNOR, and he did his PhD from PDDU, Gandhinagar. He has more than 33 years of experience in production operation, R&D, and the corporate functions. So he has authored more than 10 papers in the international and national forum. He has been a renowned speaker at various platforms. So now I invite Dr. Anand Gupta to take the floor. Dr. Anand Gupta, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chawla, and good morning to everybody. I especially request JS sir, if he is there, to see 2-3 of my slides, because this will be something new which I will try to show, and then what we discussed. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm there.
Yes,
Go
sir.
ahead.
So I'll, because some of my presentation which I am going to read after that, you have already spoken, sir, and then this was there in the video also. So I will especially request for you to have a word on that. So first of all, thank you very much to the organizers for putting this one of its kind event together. I understand the team has worked very hard, and then I was also a part for some of that what was being prepared. Mr. Laidi, who has been working tremendously, and which was acknowledged by DG also in his address. One of my colleagues, Mr. Sudhir Kumar, also closely worked in that, and thank you and congratulations, as was acknowledged by Secretary Sir, DG Sir, and GS Sir also for this event. And I would also like to acknowledge that in this very first session, the issue of team was being discussed. So here is a team which consists of ministry, we as facilitator, NOCs is there, which is being represented. We have private partnership. So all of us are there so as to put as a team and so as to make it happen. So that is also a very good part. So this teamwork will deliver, team will deliver. That is also a very good thing which we have put together. Coming to a point which was being discussed, that finally whatever you do, outcome, this is what matters. So sir, to you and to all of the people, and I am told that more than 7,000 people are participating in this online event, which is also a very good challenge and which I think organizers have met successfully. So to all of them to bring out that is the outcome finally what is happening today, I would like to inform all of you that after a few years of production, stagnant or decline, the things are started looking up, things have started looking north. And let me communicate over here that in the month of January 21, our average gas production for the country as a whole has crossed the average production of the country from February 20. In February 20, our average production was 80 mm SCMD, and the production for the January 21 has crossed 82 million. So that's a positive sign, it's a positive outcome, and it shows that the industry has started delivering. Last few years' efforts made from the ministry, from the DGH, and everybody together has started paying results. That's very important information. In fact, continue with that outcome. Yesterday's production was 84 million. So we are inching towards crossing for this month of February a target of more than 84 million on an average. So that's a positive sign. We hope that by the terminal of this month, that is February 21, we should be crossing 85 million. And this is all possible because a very technologically intensive, technologically challenging project has been commissioned, and the people who have commissioned this already is in the panel. I can acknowledge the BP along with the Reliance team who has made it possible, who have also demonstrated that in spite of the COVID, one of the worst 100-year situation, it has been they have been able to deliver. And we at DGH and at Ministry had tried that whatever help was possible in terms of facilitation was provided. I'm happy to note and then record it again over here that day for yesterday there was a big meeting by the secretary where he had called up players and there also this issue was discussed. So that's what I wanted to communicate, one outcome, and we hope that this oil front also the similar situation is going to come in the next few months. The outlook for the current year in terms of gas will be definitely going to be much brighter. We are hoping that by this year end, much better situation will be there in terms of gas production. Oil is also going to come. 2-3 good projects are already lined up, and these will deliver. So that was the one outcome, sir, I wanted to communicate and to all of us present over here. Second is, the gas production in second, just continue with that part, that almost this project from the BP Reliance has touched 6 mm SCMD, and we are hoping that by June it should cross the production levels of 13 million. So that's a very good thing, and other projects will also come. I would like to just share the presentation. Yeah. So, sir, I think, is it being shared from that side? I'll request that yeah. Yeah. So, sir, this is the second outcome I wanted to apprise you. I think this is a study which has been just released. It's not in public domain. We had discussed with the Ristad Energy, and this slide shows that where do we stand in terms of overall perception, or where in terms of overall take which is being taken by the government.
Dr. Gupta, slides are not visible.
I have shared it from here. Just one second.
Social friendly, can you?
Just one second.
Sir, so if you want, we can present from our end. Is that going to be okay with you?
No,
Yeah.
okay, if you can try.
Yeah, so if you just stop, you can stop sharing your screen and we'll present from our end. You'll have to stop sharing the screen. I think you have to click there and stop. You're on mute, sir. You're on.
No, I'm not sharing. Just let me try one.
Yeah, sir, I think the screen sharing is still on from your end. Once you close it, then I'll be able to share. There's an arrow pointing. ये कहाँ से क्या हो रहा है?
ना आपको बोलना पड़ेगा social friend is doing all our eyes only.
Nah, we recognize his voice. Social friendly is very friendly.
Now we are live.
Okay, good. I think sorry for that virtual issues. I think technical glitches. I think finally it has been solved. So as I mentioned, can you go to the next slide, please? Yeah. So as I was mentioning, sir, this is what is the outcome of a recent study which has been issued in December 2020 and courtesy from Rystad Energy. What they have done, they have carried out a study of 27 countries with respect to the status and an average government take vis-a-vis break-even price. So in these 27 countries, if we see, we can see if somebody can put a pointer at India. India is figuring in between, that is in almost at the central stage with a yellow dot over there and written as India. So what it shows that our government take in that country is at in between the low countries who are taking less government take and countries who are taking at the higher take. In fact, there are 10 countries who are before us, and there are almost 15 countries who are more than us. In fact, some of the countries are taking more than 95% of the final revenue which is coming out after, this royalty and all that kind of statutory levies. So their position, as far as India's position is concerned, it's quite okay. But then this does not speak in totality as far as, overall perception is concerned, because again, you have to compete with other countries who are better placed in terms of United Kingdom, Canada, or Kuwait, United States, and all that countries. Indonesia, which was one of the pioneers in terms of PSCs, the government take over there is much more than what India is taking. So this shows us that we are there, but we need to do much more. As JSR was trying to tell, that this policy or incentivization is a continuous process which needs to evolve over a period of time, and it has been evolving more so in the last few years. One more important point to tell over here, that with the revenue sharing contracts which are going to come and which will start delivering results in the shortly, with that government stake is also going to reduce. So we hope that our position as a country will further improve, and we will be able to compete with some of these countries which are better positioned as far as our condition is concerned. So this was one of the things which I wanted to show to you, sir, and to all the audience over here. Next. I've also tried to see a study which has been carried out by IHS Energy, and that also shows that and they have done a big study with respect to the different countries, that with the price vis-a-vis how the government take and how the fiscal incentives are there when the prices are going up and down, and how the government reacts at that point of different positions. Sorry, there was some disturbance. So what they have tried to tell and then show it over here, I think almost from 2000 to 2018, over a period of 20 years, this study was carried out, and they show that the governments initially have an inertia because the kind of revenues which they were getting, and then the price start coming down. They have an inertia and they don't want to change, and then they try to fix through economic fixes, some kind of reserves, debt, spending cuts, and all that kind of thing starts coming. So initially there is an inertia. If you see on the left side, there are four bars which have been shown. The first is the inertia, second is the financial preservation, and then what they're trying to work out, that you put additional kind of rent or kind of more take which they try to take, so as to keep on ensuring that the revenues which are required to the government continue. After that, there is an investor reaction. So investors don't start investing because they find that the returns are not coming. So that is at the bar number 3. And then finally, when they say that the situation is not improving, the government starts reversing. So that is a kind of situation which the global phenomena has shown, and this is the outcome of that study which I was referring to. But here, when we see our country on the right side, we have tried to plot a graph with respect to the Brent crude price vis-a-vis at different years, what kind of policies or incentives were being put together over there. And we see that continuously, even though prices were rising, when we see from 2010 to 2014, government continuously kept on working and then ensuring that the things are put in place. So in 2010 there was NELP 9, which was brought together with some better terms and conditions. In 2012, we can see there is a second flag which we have put. The PSC's policies, relaxations were put together. In 2014, there was a big change in terms of domestic natural gas guidelines which were brought out. Hydrocarbon study survey was carried out, which brought that, what kind of resources were available, in 2017 was the outcome of that. In 2015, again, there was a DSF policy which was brought together, and finally, these two rounds were there, outcome of which is expected to be delivering shortly in the times to come. In 2016, there was HELP which was brought, and this HELP policy, through OLF rounds, 5 rounds have been done. Acreage area of the country is being increased. NDR was also done 2017, and then 2018 OLP with new vigorous first round, and 2019-20, which sir, secretaries have also mentioned, and one of the latest being the price discovery platforms which have been created and have already been used. Some of this I will be telling in the next two slides. So these two things I was trying to tell, that where do we figure in terms of price versus policy incentivization, and what is the outcome of all that, what has happened in the last few years, to all of you. Next. So this is a known information, but just to put together, when we move from discoveries to production, and these are the 6 pillars which are there, and each of these will require some kind of incentivization, policy support, because finally, if we have to produce from the resources and the reserves which are available in the country, these are the kind of things which are considered. First is obviously the reservoir size or volume of the hydrocarbons. One of our recent study based on the data and some of the success has shown that in terms of offshore, we need at least 10 times more reserves compared to onshore, just as to make it viable. Infrastructure and technology, obviously, so very important. As I mentioned, one of the outcome in the recent project we have seen, the BP Reliance project in KG, the 6th block has shown how the technology is so important. And the infrastructure nearby, especially offshore development, is very important, whereby the government is now trying to find out that how this infrastructure can be used, shared infrastructure kind of thing can be created. Accessibility, which is very important. We have to reach some of the areas, especially when we have been interacting recently in the Assam, some of the area which was not accessed earlier have challenges, but hold good potential over there. The so very important thing in terms of prevalent market prices in terms of oil and gas, which everybody is here understands, and then fiscal policies, what we have been discussing, we will be discussing a little bit, and the forest and environment clearance in the current situation when there is so much of discussion in terms of energy transition, how the clean fuels are to be developed, how environment is to be protected. So those are the 6 pillars in which finally the things are to be developed in terms of policy and fiscal support. Yeah, next, please. Yeah, this I will next. Yeah. So just to quickly put together, some of this has already been brought out in the video which was shared, and then if we see last 6 years journey. And I mentioned earlier also, but just to quickly tell that in 2014, the work on resources study started. We had 2015 DSF round, NSP, which has been one of the important input has come, which will further help us understanding our resources, which was in 2016. In 2017, NDR and then monetization of CBM has been launched. And we hope that in next 2 years, a substantial contribution from CBM is going to come. The fields which are producing and the fields which are under development will contribute and enhance the production of CBM gas substantially in the years to come. In 2018, we have seen that OLP DSF2 has come. Then in 2019, through a cabinet reform, production enhancement schemes were announced. NOCs have been empowered to develop the business model, which JSL was also mentioning, and then some of these can help in bringing the technology if the business models are properly put together. And in 2020, we have seen self-certification and ensuring that, ease of doing business and gas pricing guidelines, which I mentioned, have started delivering the results. One of the recent options has already been brought, and because of that, in the times to come, the production or outcome of the gas is going to increase. Next, please. So what I was trying to tell that these are the 5 areas in terms of key recent reforms which have been put together. that integrating or in the times to come, it will definitely help that the DGH revenue management system is being integrated with Bharat Kosh. There is a task force which is working in a very time-bound manner, and we hope it will deliver the results. And this will help the government machinery and the operators to work together and ensuring that the requisite view of the government is available online in time, and there are no further hassles, after some time when the new things start coming up. The exemption for seeking environment clearances, all of you are aware that in 2020 already a good notification has come which has allowed, and in terms of clearances for exploration has improved. At DGH also we are trying to put together, and then DG sir has taken a quite new initiative along with the government so as to facilitate in terms of clearances, especially on the environment forest side. There is a live interaction nowadays with the operators so as to ensure that these things move forward and fast. And natural gas reforms, as I mentioned, have already been brought together, and we hope with some more things coming up, this should also further improve. Production enhancing scheme, as I mentioned, NOCs have got a good opportunity now to move forward in terms of bringing some good business model which can help sharing some of the infrastructure and some of the fields, revitalizing and improving the production performance. ER policy has been already put together, and then some of the good work is being done. Some more needs to be done, which will deliver the results in the times to come. Next, please. So as I mentioned that these are the three important things in terms of health, geoscientific data initiatives, assessment study has been done. Initiative for renewing this study has already started. We hope this will deliver the results. Using the whole NSP data, DSF will also start delivering the results. In the next slides, I will be showing. Next, please. So as I mentioned that in terms of outcome, this is what is expected. Almost in OLP, we are expected that $2.4 billion of commitment is there in terms of investment. In 2D seismic, more than 30,000 line kilometers is planned. In 3D, more than 45,000 square kilometers is planned. We plan to drill almost 380 exploratory wells, which will be a quite eventful period in the times to come. And considering the right bar shows the progress, which due to pandemic and COVID during the last year was impacted, but the things have started taking shape, and we hope that in the times to come it will further improve. Next, please. So as I was mentioning, this is what is envisaged from the DSF, and some of the small players who are new are already working from the DGH and the ministry side. We are trying to give a hand-holding, and here we can acknowledge the support of the NOCs also, the way they are supporting, and because some of this will require the infrastructure to be shared with them, and a good cooperation is coming. We hope that from the 54 plus contract areas covering almost 101 fields, 42 PMS have been granted, 28 FDPs have been noted, and we hope that by the year 24-25, we hope to see almost 1.3 million tons of production from these fields. I'm mentioning this with respect to the FDPs which have been noted, and we hope that almost 3 BCM of gas is envisaged from both East Coast and West Coast. And we hope that if things go well, by Q1 of next year, that is 21-22, a good amount of production from the West Coast is going to come. Things have already started moving. I got a good news yesterday that this MoPU for one of the operators started sailing from the Middle East, and this should be in place by April. Let's hope that these things start delivering. Yeah. Next. Yeah. Next. Yeah, I am not mentioning this because still still this is being discussed. Next, please. So finally, just to sum up, that as far as favorable policy is concerned, and all of you are aware, some of this was mentioned in the addresses by the Secretary Sir, DG Sir, and the JSR also, that we will have 12% of share in global energy demand, which is almost double from the current level by 2050. This we are mentioning because the theme of the conference is up to 2050. There will be increase by almost 350% in natural gas consumption in the country. There will be 100% increase in terms of oil consumption in the country. So obviously, in terms of Atmanirbhar Bharat, we have to move and ensure that our production increases. We have a potential of 42 mmTOE, and with the current study being done over for reassessing the resources, this should further improve, which will also include the unconventional hydrocarbons. Almost 30 BTOE undiscovered prospective resources, and 12 have been discovered. There are favorable policies which I mentioned in terms of OLP, DSF, farm in, farm out, and we are also trying that companies or which are trying to put the PI moving from one block to another block should be pushed on a fast track basis. The fiscal incentives, as I mentioned, are there. Ease of doing business, which is one of the government key agenda, and it was mentioned that minimum government, maximum governance, that is the kind of thing, and with the self-certification process in place, we hope that it will be of use, and then you can save some of your time, which can be put together for further improving the country's production. Environmental clearances have been waived off for the exploration activities. 100% FDI is allowed. And if you are able to produce, which itself is a big fiscal incentive, your royalty gets reduced. So that itself is a big thing. For category 2 and 3, there is acreage, and then work program based develop can be carried out. And we have also put together this early monetization policy, fruits of which we have seen. A new basin in the country has been opened by the NOC, that is ONGC. The Bengal basin has been opened to the production. So that early monetization policy has already been put together. And we hope that in the times to come, this policy will further give good results because some of the OLP blocks which are under exploited drilling will deliver in terms of overall production using this early monetization policy. So thank you very much for next slide, which is the thank you slide, for giving me this opportunity and starting on this good note. And thank you to be here with all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gupta. You have given an overview what are the policies being brought in by the government and what are the future outlook of the government and DGH and ministry. So thank you very much. So now question answer we'll have at the end of all the presentations. So the next speaker is Mr. R.K. Dhasmana, who is currently the basin manager of Krishna Godavari Basin, the most promising and happening basin. Shri Dhasmana is having experience of more than 36 years. He started with well site operation, then interpretation, then planning and monitoring. He was also associated with various international projects at the ONGC Videsh Limited in terms of bidding and evaluation of the prospectivity of those international blocks. He was also very, very closely associated with the ONGC Prospective Plan 2030, 10% import reduction plan, and also with the ONGC Energy Strategy 2040. So now I'll request Mr. Dhasmana to take the floor, and he'll be speaking on the support required for stimulating deep water exploration. As we all know that deep water is prospective, lot of potential is there. So after Dr. Gupta, now it is the turn of industry players, the learned speakers from industry. So I give the floor to Mr. R.K. Dhasmana. Mr. Dhasmana, please.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chawla. Respected Shri Amar sir, and my friends on the panel, my old friend, though now right now on the other side of the table, Dr. Anand Gupta, Mr. Mahapatra, Rajiv, and it's really thank you for the privilege of being in the big league. The task given is a little tough one. I mean, in the periods where survival for even conventional hydrocarbons, from economic perspective or economic viability perspective, is challenging. I'm given the task of speaking on viability of deep waters in India. So, nonetheless, as Mr. Chawla said, Mr. Gupta was from the side of the regulator or government. Now it is the industry players. So,
No, we are not regulators. We are facilitators.
Dr. Gupta is regulator, facilitator, and scientific advisor all rolled into one, sir. So anyway, now this is we are the foot soldiers. So what I would be speaking about would be the expectation of the industry from the government, a very proactive government. Let me say before I actually put up my presentation up that last 5 to 7 years have been an absolute roller coaster as far as policy modifications and the positiveness of the government comes up. I recollect that in a report on 10% import reduction, I was also a member of that task force, and the industry had recommended about, which was coordinated by PCRA. Industry had recommended about, say, 13 or 14 policy changes, and it's very heartening to know that to less or more extent, almost every dispensation has been granted by the government. I think we must compliment the government and DGH for this. I think.
Yeah.
Okay. So there it is.
Yeah, it is there. Yes. Maybe you can
Yes,
bring in slide mode, but it is clear.
okay. Okay, sir. I'm sorry. Slide. I
Please
think
move on.
it's changing. Okay. Hello.
So
It is
since
on
we're
slide
presenting from
one.
our end,
Slide.
you can just we are presenting from our end, so to avoid any.
Pardon? You can. Is it visible to everybody?
Mr. Dhasmana, it is visible. It is slide number 1.
Okay. Change हो रहा है, sir? I've come to the disclaimer slide.
Yes.
Okay. Right, sir. So, very simple. The disclaimer is a very general one. Essentially, my personal views and not necessarily that of my company. Now, as the one thing I suppose, sir, that in the period of turmoil and in the ruins of demolished demand, probably there might be certain questions that whether and demolished demand and opposition to oil as a fuel, as a polluting agent by different activists and environmental groups and all that. I think this slide is good enough to demonstrate that the oil is absolutely sure to stay in India for at least one cycle. The slide on the right side, that IEA assessment says that in the primary energy mix of India, oil would still play about 23% role, and 23% role out of the 1983 million tons. So you need probably much more oil than what we have today in 2040 also. So every resource in India, every resource that is available domestically would always have a chance to survive, provided it is supported by the right fiscal ease of doing business and the industry promotion. Yeah. So. So let's just have come straight away to the deep water. We have had some to the left. It is very clearly seen that 84 blocks under NELP were awarded in deep water and ultra deep water, while the total area, sedimentary area of deep water is about 39% out of about 3.4 million square kilometers sedimentary area of the country. A little bit of worry actually that seriously 2 blocks have reached the production stage out of these 81, but the positives are the deep water contains 39% area, 10% licenses of the total offered were in deep water. Most of the production in, but the big positive is that most of the production in India comes from tertiary stratigraphy, and deep water basins of India are dominated by tertiary field. At the level of exploration we are today, somebody may probably prematurely conclude about the potential of deep waters. I would say that the exploration density still is far too less to really make any definitive and final judgments on this. Cost-wise, technology-wise, it is challenging. So, but to survive, does deep water need a stimulus? That is the question, and that's what I've been asked. That if it is a if it requires a stimulus, it definitely does. What should that be? So let us just have a look at the fiscal regimes in India. We know that the royalty tax ruled the roost till say about 1997 totally, with the small portion going to pre-NELP and PSC and small and medium-sized field rounds in 1994-95. 97 onwards, there was NELP, that was production sharing concept, and 2017 there was revenue sharing contract. So currently we have about three regimes running. We have royalty tax, we have production sharing contracts, and we have revenue sharing contract. To cap it up, I'll say that one very important event happened in 2019, wherein the Niti Aayog on behalf of government actually did a basic change from revenue primacy to enhanced production primacy by the government of India. This was a very big shift when it was said that profit petroleum or taxes or none of them matters. What matters actually, what comes first is the enhanced production. And the figure given by Niti Aayog there were that the profit petroleum, which was coming from the profit sharing or production sharing contracts, was only of the order of about 4.5 or 5,000 crores. It was decided that what is important is let us enhance the domestic production. And if there is a production, there is an investment, there is royalty, and if the operator makes a profit, there is income tax and all that. So government revenue anyway comes once the business is on. And another very big change which was done around that time was that complete marketing and pricing freedom for all gas. I think Indian gas market actually is under-realized market as far as its revenue generation capacity is concerned. This was a very positive change, and probably it would look up for the good in all sectors. Now we know that deep water is very capital intensive, technology intensive. We need investment. What drives the investment? And we know that investment is driven by geological prospectivity primarily. Then fiscal environment and ease of doing business, geopolitical context are equally important. And we know that investment is pulled by a product or multiplication of all these four. We know that if one of them goes down, the other three has to really pull them up. So if we are lacking at one front, we probably need improvement in the other three to make up for that shortcoming. What we know. What we don't have is, we know that we are not a North Sea or a Gulf of Mexico or Niger Delta or West Africa or Sub-Saharan Centers. So that is what where my predecessor, my friend Dr. Gupta showed me a slide where we said that the government take. Probably, and one very starking thing was there that all those countries, all 33 countries probably have a much better prospectivity or much better geological potential than India has. So we know that we are not dealing with a very rich province, and we know that at the most we have a moderate prospectivity. What we have a very positive and proactive government that is ready for all positive changes that improves the investment climate. So as I said in my preamble, that most of the changes recommended by the working groups in the industry, government has been quite positive about it. Most of them are granted, maybe some more are in pipeline. And as far as liberalization and creating business opportunities for the industry is concerned, I hope the government is doing wonderfully well. Now, these concessions given, did they work? They did. But deep water being absolutely very heavily cost and technology intensive, probably needs much more. It did work for other things. Deep water requires a bit more than what we have right now. Now the positive is that in India, all past production, most of this has come from, say, Mumbai, Assam, and Cambay. These are the dominant producers in India, and most of the hydrocarbons that has produced so far and that remains in the reserves actually comes from tertiary basins. Now, we know that Mumbai can be Assam. One can say maybe there is a lot of potential still remaining, but the easy oil is almost done and dusted with. Deep waters, as I said earlier also, has got basically a tertiary fill, maybe supported by Cretaceous sundrift sections somewhere down below, which actually enhances the potential of the deep water basins. That remains a frontier still to be conquered. And one thing is very clear: the kind of projections which were shown, which I talked about, or what Mr. Anand Gupta talked about, for Indian ENP to sustain, if Indian domestic ENP has to remain relevant in such kind of demands, where my country would be needing about, say, 400 million tons of oil per year, for us to remain relevant even, probably deep water area will have to be kept in focus. Investors need to be kept interested in deep water, ENP. We know that A into B into C into D equation, we know that we cannot help A, and D is good. A is the geological prospectivity and D is the geopolitics. Probably geological prospectivity, we know we can't change. Geopolitically, we know that India is a very stable country, and come whatever may, the democracy will always rule here. So no worries on D. A can't help. What we need to do, that is where we come to the subject. That is, we need to make B, that is the fiscal, and C is the ease of doing business. We need to make that more attractive. How do we do it? Question is how. Well, I think these are the four fulcrums of what comes to my mind, purely my personal ideas. And this is what we, being a foot soldier, as we said, we are working with the people who are actually operating smaller and bigger business in ENP. So this is what it comes out. Improve knowledge base. We know that in terms of deep water, we still, there's a huge area, about 1.7, 1.8 million square, or maybe a little more than that. And considering that the exploration density is very little. Exploration, most of the work done was with an objective of finding commercial success and maybe encash it quickly, because it is heavily front capex loaded and technology loaded venture. But actually, the efforts to really make to strengthen the knowledge base, to provide clear-cut risk reward perception to the investor has not been done so far. I would again dwell upon this, and I would compliment Mr. Amarnath for one thing, is that during our discussion, sometimes, I mean, because ministry, everybody keeps on meeting, we also go with the demands to the ministry. I was heartened, it was absolutely pleased and heartened to see that he was one person who was talking about parametric well of the order of maybe 500 wells or 1,000 wells. Absolutely amazing forwardness on behalf of the government. The other one is that one very critical point, which people may say that it is generally not part of exploration policies or the fiscal policies anywhere, is we safeguarded the big exploration risk money and big spending on front-end technologies. We'll come to that point a little later. Ease of doing business, as has been said by what was told by Mr. Secretary also, and Mr. Chairman in this session also said that this is government is absolutely determined about. Maybe, but ministry also has its own findings. It's up to the industry to suggest to them like how it can actually be done. Easy exit options. We have exit options available, and easy exit option must be there. And the only thing two things I think we can take care there is that one is that we must have a penalty, but as a deterrent, not as a punishment. And the other thing is that what we need to ensure is that time is not lost. Time is not lost. So probably milestone-based exit options also need to be formulated. It is not that a person waits for the full cycle of 4 years to decide that I'm not going to it. Then one pays LD and goes back. So all contractual obligations are fulfilled. The operator has paid LD, but exploration has lost a 4-year time period. So probably milestone-linked exit options can be worked out. And we also know that probably, I think the last point I'm going to make is actually covered under the government shift from revenue primacy to enhance production primacy. We know that once the geological prospectivity is not very good, the current market conditions are absolutely treacherous. This is buyer's market. Probably we need to give as many concessions as to the buyers. I'm one of them as possible. No, sir, knowledge building for risk reward perception. The point number one out of the 4 measures we suggested, the first one was the knowledge building. I must compliment the government that it has actually done first 2 points there very successfully: resource reassessment and the national assessment program. The resource reassessment is something which actually is a first general indicator of the geological prospectivity of a country or a basin. A huge effort has been done by, it's a remarkable effort, in fact, in the NSP. I must compliment government and DGH for this. In one, I think at one given moment, there were about 8 to 10 or certain sectors were under operation in India. And drilling of parametric well, it's under, I mean, if I see it from the public domain and all that perspective, I think it is under very serious consideration of Government of India. Now, what we, there's one more thing probably, what we need to do is, what I would urge the government to do it, and that we need to have a broad grid, broadband processed, interpreted 2D data set, calibrated with drilled wells, for the entire deep offshore together. One complete set for maybe East Coast and one complete set for the West Coast. I think that somebody has to do this because it's an absolutely killing amount of investments one has to make before we actually get into the deep waters. The areas are big, even PL fees are big. 10,000 square kilometer and 4,000 rupees per square kilometer PL fee, even that is big. Drilling is absolutely drilling entails absolutely mind-boggling amounts. So we need to have a give a very what do you call high-quality interpreted intellectual reports, so that the investor can is very sure about the risk-reward perception he conceives about a basin or about a business opportunity. Now, key parametric wells in basins, deep basin deeps to remove uncertainties of our petroleum system in deep waters. We have no parametric wells drilled in deep water, and there are certain areas which probably we'll have to go and do them. Now, right now there are none, but if there are programs like ocean drilling program or deep sea drilling program or margins, such things if are on offer, I think Government of India or some consortium must be a regular part of this, so that more knowledge base can be created on that. And I think I already covered the last point: a comprehensive technical assessment document for East and West Coast deep water basins separately. Right now, what we have is done by individual operators, but we do not really have a comprehensive technical assessment document for East and West Coast deep waters. Now, safeguarding exploration risk money and big spending on front-end technologies. The first point, very crucial. Probably there was echo posterity. I'll repeat it third time in this speech today. We must compliment to the government for that they really have brought in a big basket of positive policy changes in recent times. There's a little bit of concern here because all enablers or incentivization or the policy dispensations, most of them are either indicated towards easing the business process or incentivizing the operator when he produces. But very unfortunately, all the risk in E&P is run before the discovery. And the risk money in terms of deep water before I drill it could be really big, tens of millions of dollars. So I know that if I hit it big, there are policies which incentivize me. They incentivize me in terms of maybe reduced royalty, incentivize in terms of tax holidays, incentivize in terms of in NELP like complete cost recovery, in OLP absolutely, if in category 2 and 3 absolutely no revenue share with the government, and so there are many other dispensations available. But what if I do not make a discovery and I spend maybe 50 or $100 million? Some sort of hedging needs to be provided on that. Now, there's no provision today right now. Now, talking of safeguarding the operator, it's a little unheard of, because we would say it is not done anywhere on the globe. But then, as I said in the beginning, we are not in Niger Delta or Gulf of Mexico or Sub-Saharan Santos, where I hit, say, billion barrel fields every now and then. Is it possible, or does it sound really logical even talking about safeguarding our operator? I would say yes. Indian context, we need to give investor a reason to choose Indian deep waters over other possible investment destinations. Some weird suggestions over there. There are only suggestions, probably for deliberation of the House and industry in general. Like the first thing probably we need to do is delinking of deep water from contiguous on land or shallow water producing areas for basin categories. What actually it does is that as per the current dispensation, revenue share comes into the picture, because category 1 still has a bit of revenue share weightage of over 20 or 30%. I don't exactly remember, sir. But if we delink the basins like Kaveri or Manadi, northeast coast, or rather Kaveri on land is producing. Offshore is deep offshore is not, but that is part of category 1 basin, so I have to bid a revenue share in that. Probably that linking is to be done, or even being more wild, I think revenue share can in fact be done away with totally. Now, maybe another option is that we consider some of the R&D expenditure as some of the deep water expenditure as R&D expenditure, and I would recall it here that when and I would compliment and put it on record that the current Director General, when he took over, I think they had moved such kind of a proposal also, so that some kind of tax exemption is available to the investor if it is treated as R&D. And then maybe the other one is even more weird, like ring fencing with on-land shallow water bitter blocks in deep water, and the cost recovery, of course, is not available today. So probably it's a bit impractical with revenue sharing contracts in place. But had it been about NELP and all that, probably this would have been one option. Okay, sir. So ease of doing business, it's very, very important. All clear license, as Mr. Nath actually talked about, and then fixed timeline for granting clearance also is important. It's very important. Actually, there might be some clearances and licenses which are available to me for the entire period of exploration. That can be done in advance, and then there are some clearances which I need to take along the operations depending upon the activity I'm undertaking. It must have a fixed timeline for that. And generally it happens, we submit an application and then correspondence goes on. And one example I would say that in West Bengal, we in fact the government has granted us excusable delay of the order of 1200 and 1300 days because LAQ took that much of time. But I agree that there was nothing in the control of central government. We did, but they granted us excusable delay, but the process itself is delayed by 4 years. Then interministerial things at Delhi and center state tuning is one very important aspect. And then there would be overlaps among same agency handling regulator, scientific advisor, and facilitator. Probably this is again something which government needs to look at. Easy exit option, as I was talking about, penalty must be as a deterrent only. And I would say that yes, from straight away from the later rounds of NELP, I think NELP 8 or NELP 9, since the time we came up with the fixed LD, and I think this is already reduced a lot when it is not on the actual cost basis or rival basis, or so I think we are quite ahead on that count. Current predefined penalties are reasonable. So, but yes, actual committed physical work equivalent penalties are not there today. It's fine. That goes pretty well with the point number 1. And the other point which I was talking about, possibility following exit on milestone basis. Once 50% of the committed investment is done, we give an option with whatever discount on LD we can give. And maybe 75% MWP investment done, maybe we give operator that on the remaining commitment, you can take 50% discount and go. So probably that kind of facilitation. I know that these ideas are wild, but wild are the figures required for exploring in deep water, and wild would be the people who would, under such a downturn, who take the courage and come and explore in deep waters. We need to really facilitate that. One general recommendation is that this is anyway probably it has appeared right through because we have front end technologies in deep and ultra deep waters and HPST domain are extremely costly if implemented in isolated cases. So right now, what happens that my company may think of drilling one deep or ultra deep water, now, mobilizing a rig, mobilizing testing equipments, mobilizing other services in deep, ultra deep, and that holds true for HPST also. It has got a separate drilling fluid systems. It has got separate logging tools, testing tools, and all that. So implementing this technology for one-off case is not economical for anyone. So any operator would shy away from investing money in these. So,
Mr. Dhasmana, uh,
yes, sir.
sir,
I'm done
please
with,
speed
sir.
up. Sure.
Only
Thank
one
you.
license. Only one.
Sure,
So,
sir. Sure.
production previously attained after use of state-of-art expensive technology can be demolished by a price fall like 2014-20. The only thing we say is that government probably may think, the industry has been talking about this for quite some time, may think about giving some sort of a lower benchmark protection. And then ultimately, probably, we know that this is not the time for business. The deep water is not business as usual. It doesn't work here. And with the willing government and eager industry, probably we can together do things. Thank you very much, sir. Thank
Thank
you.
you very much,
Thank you,
Mr.
sir.
Dhasmana. Mr. Dhasmana has covered what are the prospectivity, what are the challenges, what is required, what has been done in terms of policy, and what more is required from the government. So thank you very much, Mr. Dhasmana. So now we'll go to the third presentation of this particular session, which will be innovation to the surmount the challenges of the E&P sector, and the presenter is Mr. Rajiv Kumar, Vice President, Business Development and Integration, Regional Cities and Solution, BP India. Mr. Kumar is the Vice President, Business Development and Integration for the BP India region, a subsidiary of BP PLC. He leads a BP engagement with government, regulator, and represent BP in various industry associates. He's with BP for the last 12 years, and prior to that, he was with Oil India for 22 years. He is an engineering graduate from NIT Warangal and master from FMS Delhi. And he has over 30-year experience in the complete chain with operation, pipeline, project, strategy planning, business development, and whatnot. So he is very actively involved with various industry organization in support of growth of E&P industry in the country, and he has been very vocal about his opinion. How I have seen him very closely uh, in various platforms. So, and his interest outside work includes travels and fitness, which I fully agree. So, without taking much time, I invite Mr. Rajiv Kumar to take the floor. Mr. Rajiv Kumar, thank you.
Thank you, Sanjay, and thank you for some good words. I don't know how much of that I deserve. And I think the role which you talked about is why my new role, where I will be looking at the integrated energy offer. Coming back, I think chairman of the session, Mr. Amar Nath, co-chair, co-panelist, and participants. Good afternoon to all of you. Good thing about the session is about more than 1 hour old. Most of the things which you want to talk about has already been talked about. So probably I will not be taking so much of time. Firstly, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my views on the topic of policy innovation to overcome the challenges of E&P sector. I think this is a very critical topic given the growing India's growing energy demand and the role oil and gas will continue to play to meet that demand. What I will do is I will divide s- uh, my views in 4 different parts. Firstly, on the India's energy consumption and also India resources, which basically to set the context. And then I will talk about some of the regulatory innovations or on the regulatory reforms which are required. And then lastly, I do need to talk about the need to reduce the carbon footprint there. On the energy consumption, as you know, India has a population about 1.4 billion, and we are the second largest populous city, and we are the third largest consumer of energy after US and China. But while we are the third largest consumer of energy, we also recognize that India is one of the lowest. India's energy consumption is one of the lowest per capita. If you look at per capita, in fact, much lower than the global average also. So this has to change, and this is changing rapidly for sure. And if you look at it, most of the outlook that this talks about India being the fastest energy growing country. And as per our own energy outlook, we see the energy demand in all scenarios growing in the range of about 2.5 to 3%. And that means the total world's demand, the increase in world demand in next 20 to 30 years, 35% of that increased demand is coming from India. And India today, India's share, which is 6% in the global energy consumption, will go up to 12% in next 20, 30 years. So there is a huge additional demand for energy. And a lot of this, during the energy transition, a lot of this will come from low carbon energy, but this has to be complemented by oil and gas. And as we see, oil and gas will meet almost about 25% of this new demand. That means whatever we are producing today, the demand will be 25% more than that, or whatever we are consuming today, oil and gas, demand will be 25% more than that. And that said, obviously the gas is expected to grow much faster in the range of about 5 to 6%. And at the same time, even oil is India is one of the few countries where oil demand is also, as per most of the scenario, oil demand is also expected to go at least for up to 10 years. So in the midterm, it's 5 to 10 years. The oil demand is also expected to go. So, but the problem is that the difference between supply and demand and supply is increasing. And with this increased energy demand, increased demand for oil, gas, if we don't take action today, we don't do anything to produce more, increase the investment in E&P, this demand between supply and demand and supply will go on increasing. That's the reason there is very important for increasing the investment in the E&P sector and to increase production. So that brings me to the resources. If you look at resources, and all of us know that India is a medium to high risk basin, and exploration success ratio has been in the last, if you anything to go by in the last 20, 30 years, has been in the range of 10 to 15%. And if you talk about commercial discovery, this is even lower. And that we can see from the investment and the risk capital which has been put in during the NELP, pre-NLP, and result of those risk capital. But having said that, I think there is a resource story in India. As part of our long-term technology view for India, we carried out a study of resources, both for oil and gas, with the help of IHS market. And as per our study, we do see a resource of almost about 100 TCM of gas resources in the next 20 to 30 years. This consider both already discovered resources as well as the yet to find, and coming mainly from conventional, unconventional, and frontier and existing basins yet to find. So that's about gas. On the oil, while we do not see too much of the study do not see too much of a exploration potential, but we do see huge amount of IOR, UR potential. And as per the study and based on the information which is available through the public domain, the study carried out this IOR study for about 88 fields, and they observed that out of 88 fields has the potential to increase the recoverable reserve by 4 billion barrels. And if I reduce that to 10 fields, so that number will come to 2 billion barrels. So I think there is a story. I mean, there is a story about gas resources. There is a story about more oil reserves. While the numbers can be wrong, but definitely this deserves huge amount of investment, both to find oil and gas, and also in this area of IOR, UR. And in fact, these are not mere numbers. If you look at it, we that is BP along with our partner Reliance, we are executing three gas development projects. One is the R series, which has already started production from December, and we expect to bring that to about 12 to 13 MMSCMD by mid this year, which Dr. Gupta talked about. We are also in the process of executing another project, which is satellite, which expected to come by mid 2022. And then we are also executing third project is now called MJ, which we expect to bring it either late 2022 or early 2023. So these are, and this all these three projects will increase the production or bring the peak production to almost about 30 MMSCMD. And if you look at from India's gas production, this is more than 30% increase in the production. And I'm sure the other companies, ONGC, Vedanta, all the other companies are also doing the same. And I expect significant increase in gas, at least in the gas production in the coming years. And this has been possible due to the efforts of the oil and gas companies, the great support they received from the government, also from the regulator, as Dr. Gupta said. During the COVID time, we got all the support, and we got those support very quickly from DGH as well as the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas. And this has also been possible due to various policy reforms or regulatory reforms which has happened in the last few years. And one of the major reform is the gas price reforms, which started in 2016, and this is further being refined. Reforms are further being refined. I truly believe market is the best place to decide the price. And an example is our recent bid, which happened on 5th of February, where we saw true competition to come at the market price. I think initially when we put the best price, a lot of customers said that this is a very high base price you are talking about. I think nobody will come. And when we bid happened, it lasted for 7.5 hours, and the base price almost went up by 50%. So that's the advantage of having the market price out there, and let the market decide the price. That brings me to my next subject, which is the innovation or the reforms of the policy. Firstly, I must compliment the government of India, the DGH, for the number of policy and regulatory reforms the government has, or the DGH has carried out. And it is not only about the story of policy and regulatory reform; it is also about taking the fast track decisions. Decision taking has improved. In fact, if I remember, about 7-8 years back, the work program and budget used to take about 2 to 3 months, number of months. Nowadays, and sometimes years as well. But nowadays, this has become a routine affair. You submit your work program budget, few questions are asked, and this gets approved, invariably gets approved much before the start of the new financial year. So there has been a great improvement in the working, and the decision has really become fast track, I must say. And I think if I have to talk about innovation, regulatory innovation, I will say that this is the first thing that we need to continue to work as in a collaborative manner, and we need to make sure that we address any emerging issue through consultation, through discussion, and do not allow the emerging issue to become the big issue, because once it becomes a big issue, it takes a lot of senior government time, it takes a lot of company management time, and doesn't help anybody. And I'm sure Session Chairman Mr. Amarnath is aware of some of these legacy issues. I will not get into those legacy issues, but yes, it takes a lot of time, unnecessary, unproductive time out there. So we do need to be consultative. We need to have a consultative approach. We need to work in a collaborative manner. Coming to innovation, regulatory innovation, one of the area which I think we have talked earlier also is providing incentive to the operator or to the investors if they do a good job. If we look at OLP, NELP, pre-NELP, all of them, they talk about punitive action. If you don't do this, this is what will happen. We should also start thinking about how we can incentivize, how we can reward the operators, the investors, if they are able to achieve something earlier. For example, if we are able to do the complete our minimum work program well in time, probably allow us additional time for FDP submission, for appraisal. And if you are able to bring the production much faster than the estimates, then extend those benefits for that number of years which we have achieved, which we have able to achieve the advantage early. We are able to get those numbers. Yeah. For example, if I am able to if production is expected in 8 years time, I bring that into 6 years time, probably allow me incentive of 2 years of low royalty or low profit petroleum. That is something we should be thinking about. The government and regulator should be thinking about, and we are happy to work on that. Second area, although we have been talking about it earlier also, Dr. Gupta also mentioned about it, that is infrastructure sharing. And this is nothing new. I mean, this is globally, this happens. This happens in North Sea, Egypt, Gulf of Mexico, and you can find number of examples. We are in number of such fields. For example, there is a Nakika field in Gulf of Mexico. This has about 8 to 10 fields, and none of the fields were economic standalone. But that field is now producing, and every company is able to get good return from that field. Because what happens when you are doubly using the infrastructure, you are reducing, you are improving the commerciality of these discoveries. The discoveries which are non-commercial, you can bring that that can become commercial. You can fast track the development. Also, the infrastructure will not be idle. So that is something we need to think about. What we should do is, although we have been talking about it, what we should do is come out with some standard format or some standard process, where the process within, once we see, okay, this is the opportunity, one operator says this is the opportunity, I can use the other infrastructure, they can sit together, and within 15 days to 1 month's time, they are able to finalize, okay, close this thing, okay, this is what we will do, and not go on for years or 2 years just discussing this part of it. So if we can come out with a clear framework, that will be very helpful. Having talked about these two issues, I mean, there are definitely certain issues which cannot ignore, although they are not innovative issues, but these issues are which are impacting the investors. One is the tax distortion. For example, oil and gas is not in the GST. Now, what is happening is I am putting I am paying a tax of 11 to 12% on my input, while on the output there is no credit. So I am losing all 11 to 12% out there. For example, if I am spending $5 billion in the project, my $500 million is stranded. There is no credit for this. And at the same time, this puts me at disadvantage with LNG also, because for my domestic production, I'm paying 11 to 12% tax, input tax, whereas LNG is coming at a custom duty of 2.5%. So I think this distortion should be removed, and gas and oil should be brought into the GST as quickly as possible. That will greatly help the E&P sector. But unfortunately, rather than helping gas and oil coming into the GST, we have a new issue which has been created in the recent budget announcement, where it talks about through the modification in CST Act, they have taken away the advantage of C-form for the customers whose products are under GST. That means if for an interstate transfer, those customers will not be able to get C form. That means they will under C form they pay a tax of 2%, but now they will end up paying a 20 or 25%, depending on what tax state is charging, 20 to 25% tax. And in fact, most of the new production are expected to come from Andhra Pradesh. There, the taxation is 24%. So that means you are making gas costlier by 60 cents to $1 for those customers. So obviously, it is not a level playing for field, and that is what we saw when we went for the bid round for our gas. All the customers outside the Andhra Pradesh customer whose products were under GST, they decided not to participate in the bid round. So that is something, that issue before gas can come into GST, at least the C form issue should be immediately resolved. That is our second request. The third request is basically third issue is about unified pipeline tariff. Prime Minister has talked about one nation, one grid. And in fact, PNGRB has also taken, based on the input from various industry members, both from the upstream industry as well as from the marketing and downstream industry. They have announced notified the unified pipeline tariff. What is required is the implementation of that policy as quickly as possible. That will greatly help the upstream producer. So that's on the policy reforms. And coming to my last point, but not the least, is the reduction in the carbon footprint. We do. I mean, all of us recognize that climate threat is for real, and we all need to jointly work towards this. We need to take action today. At the same time, oil and gas will continue to play a role. So we need to see how we can improve our we can reduce our carbon footprint and in the, per barrel of oil and gas production. How we can reduce our methane emission. First, recognize where is the methane leakage point. How we can reduce that. How we can reduce some of the operations. How we can improve energy efficiency. At least in the scope 1 and 2, we can first look at how do we can do scope 1 and scope 2, that is the carbon emission in our operation. And then probably next stage will be looking at how I can address scope 3, that is addressing the carbon emission which happens from combustion of oil and gas. So and as at BP, what we have said is that we will be a net zero company by 2050. That means we will be net zero with respect to all scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3. That means whatever oil and gas we are producing, and if that is causing emission, we will take care of that emission as well. And not only us, in fact, you look at it, almost 2/3 of the world has committed to net zero, and a lot of companies are talking about being a net zero. I think few days back, General Motor talked about having only EV vehicle from 2035. So I think we need to act fast now. We need to be innovative and see how do we reduce the carbon footprint from our operations at least. I think so. And there is a good example. I tell you recently, and I'm sure you would have seen the paper report. Reliance Refinery purchased 2 million barrels of crude oil from Occidental, and that crude oil was carbon neutral. That what they did is they completely offset the carbon footprint of that 2 million barrels of crude oil. That means all this addresses all the 8 scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. That is from wellhead to will, the carbon has been taken care through carbon offset route. And we need to think about this innovative ideas. In fact, I was talking to session chairman, and I will pick up his word. This is like, okay, we will spill, but at the same time we are spilling, and we are cleaning. I mean, they are spilling and they are cleaning also. Probably later on, what we need to do, we need to spill more and we spill less and less and start cleaning more. And maybe as the technology evolves, we should look at how do we see and we don't spill at all. How do we, and that I understand that technology is going to take few years, but probably on the long run, we should be thinking about that. Otherwise, as surviving as an E&P company may not be possible unless we are innovative out there. I will say together, we have the historic opportunity to play our part in this towards a clean energy, and thereby do a great service on nation and on our future generation. In conclusion, I will say that we as industry, as government, as the regulator, we need to work together to enhance the production and reduce the carbon footprint, or at least minimize the carbon footprint. With these words, I'll say thank you very much for the organization for giving me the opportunity to talk. Thank you. Thanks, Sanjay.
Thank you, Rajiv. Thank you very much. You gave an overview what are the potential in terms of gas and oil from IUR, UR, what are the reforms, you complemented those reforms. Then you rightly said that for pricing, market is the best place. And you also raised some of the issues which can further improve the activity in the country. Anyway, thank you very much. We'll wrap up at the end. Mr. Chairman will give his final opinion on all these aspects. So now we'll be going to the last present of the session. I'll invite Mr. Pinakdar Mahapatra from Antilopus Energy. Mr. Mahapatra is the Director Exploration and Subsurface at Antilopus. He is a graduate from IIT Dhanbad, and he was initially with ONGC. And in the last 38 years, he has been his active experience in the field of exploration, development, contributing to diverse geological setting. Prior to Antilopus, he was Director Exploration at GAIL, leading to the portfolio expansion and exploration strategy of the company. He has established multi-billion barrel potential by establishing new plays with prospective for more than 30 discoveries in different basins. So I'll request Mr. Mahapatra, and he will be speaking on impetus to exploration through reforms. Floor is yours, Mr. Mahapatra. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chawla, session chair, co-chair, fellow panelists, and the friends in the audience. This has been a great opportunity, and I must thank the organizers for giving me this historic opportunity to talk on a topic which is so important for us at this juncture. I'm not able to share again. Yeah.
So I'm doing it.
आगे sir.
Okay.
आ रहा है. अभी.
Have you done from your side?
Yes, sir. I've gone from my side. You can come back to the Chrome screen and look at the presentation on the screen.
Okay. Yeah. So what we'll do, we will maybe next slide. So the topic is skip this, please, because the time is short. So what we'll do, we'll discuss the topic on impetus to exploration through reforms in 5 headings. So you will have to take a look at the global oil and gas scenario, because in the current context, we cannot remain isolated. We'll have to think what is happening outside our country, because that's going to impact us heavily. And then we'll take a look at the oil and gas scenario in India, and also what is the potential we have in terms of endowment within our country, and then the opportunity what we have in India in terms of exploration. And also I will touch base upon certain production opportunities, slightly deviating from the topic, and finally we will conclude. Hopefully we will have time for that. So next topic, please. Next slide. So as of before that, just a disclaimer that whatever I will be presenting, it is a country level analysis, and there is no intention to do any analysis for a specific company. And the views I will be presenting, that's my own, and it's not the view of the company for which I am working at present. So with this, I think let's go to the global scenario. So if you look at, it's already have been talked a little bit by others. So oil and gas will remain as a dominant source of energy in 2050. It is a slightly deviation from what is happening now. People are talking of the energy transition, reacting unnecessarily. Some people are even closing down the exploration bidding process. Some people are divesting the assets. I think this is a knee-jerk reaction. Soon people will realize and come back. Why I am saying so? If you look at the Prasenjit, can you put in the full view mode? If you look at the bottom diagrams, one is for oil in the left and another is for gas in the right. So if you look at the oil, there are 2 scenarios people have projected. One is the low case scenario, considering very, very fast transition. Gone. Prasenjit, it is gone.
Yeah, presentation nikal gaya फिर से.
Yeah.
Try to come back.
So if you look at the green curve, that is the low case scenario, and the red one is the business as usual. So even if you take the low case scenario, the world will require 900 billion barrel of oil till 2050. That's a lot. And if you take the business as usual scenario, you add another 220. So you are talking of 1100 billion barrels of oil we need till 2050. That's almost same as the reserve what we have. And gas, of course, is much more scenario is different, because there is no visible drop in the forecasted gas production or gas demand. In a business as usual case, in fact, there is 30% increase of gas requirement from the current level. And in case of low case scenario, we will be requiring almost same amount of gas what we are now consuming. So if you look at the gas, we will be almost requiring 7,000 TCF of gas per day, and much more than what we are consuming at present. So and so with this, we'll be consuming the entire oil and gas reserves of the world, even considering a very pessimistic scenario. So the so-called energy transition efforts, what is now undergoing. So I am a bit worried about this because the way people are reacting, the companies are reacting, the NP activities are slowing down. So there will be a severe supply constraint in near future. It may happen sooner than what all of us would think, but there is going to impact on supply, and so the price also will be impacted. So let's keep watch that space. Next slide, please. So with this global context, let's see India, what is happening. In India, of course, we are now in the energy basket. Oil and gas constitute 32%. Surprisingly, it is much lower than the world. In world over, it constitutes 52%. So we are doing well, but the problem is our demand is much higher than the domestic production. So currently, in case of oil, we are almost importing 86% of oil. And if you look at the future projection, what Jay said or DG said in the morning, we will be requiring double of the oil production per day from the current level. So that means if our production doesn't increase and remains flat, then our import will be 97%. That's a scary scenario. And the same thing is gas. So gas demand also is rising very fast. And at 2050, if the supply remains at current level, we will be importing 83% of gas what we require. So that means there is a case for really tightening our belt and do everything possible to expand the exploration and produce more. So with this, let's see. So what is the potential of India? Next slide, please. So this is one of the slides I think I've just put differently, but this has been discussed time and again. We have 26 basins. In those basins, based on the detailed petroleum studies and very good work done by DGH, 300 billion barrel of resources unrisked has been recognized in these basins. Out of that, 85 billion barrel has been discovered. So these are the discovered in place of 85. And for 85, we have the ultimate recoverable reserve of 30 billion barrel. And out of 30, we have already produced 17 billion barrels. You guys have produced so much of oil in last 50 years or so. And what is remaining reserves is 13 billion barrels. So definitely, if you consider the last two slides, we will have to do much more to add to this slide. So this, I will start a little bit from this slide. If you look at this slide bottom, I'm sorry, it is not very visible. So I've just segregated this 30 billion in terms of the age. So towards the left, it is all tertiary rock, which accounts for 87% of the reserve, and the Mesozoic and older rock accounts for only 13%. So next slide, please. We'll see why I challenge that. I not really. We have to do something else. Next slide, please. So if you see, this is the typical oil and gas realm of world. There are some very good geoscientists, Clemmy and Wilmensik. They really worked a marvelous job way back in 1991 and divided the world petroleum resources into four realms. So the two key marked in yellow color and pink color, they are called, the yellow color is Tethyan realm and pink is the South Gondwana realm. Together, these two account for 80% of the discovered reserve. So look at India's position. We are so fortunate. We cover both the realms incidentally. We have the Tethyan realm in northern margin and northeast India, and we have the South Gondwana realm in these irrigated basins in east and west. So, and these realms, both Tethyan and south of Gondwana, they have primarily, why they're so prolific? Because they have prolific Mesozoic source and they have right kind of tectonic and structural framework. So, do India have these two? Yes, we have. We have good Mesozoic rocks. We have very good structural framework, maybe better than any country has. So, why should the red dots be confined only to east, west, east, north, not in India? It's very unfortunate, and we are not able. We should do something to change this map. So I was talking the structural framework. Let's spend a minute on that. Next slide, please. So if you look at this is map of India. I could not put all the diagrams. So Normally, all petroleum systems are controlled by a particular structural framework, starting from rift basins to interior sacs to pericratonic basins, carbonate prone or clastic prone, thrust pole belt associated foreland and core deep, and then the convergent margin, whether it is island arc or Packard basin. And each country has got a specific style. Like if you talk of the Middle East province, they are mostly fold belt and foreland basin. There are similarly West Africa, they are pericratonic basins. India is the one unique country, we have everything. We have all, you name a structural style, we have it. But then why should not be? Why the prolificity is eluding us? Are we missing something really? Are we too pessimistic, or we are not able to recognize our own potential? So for that, I will describe two examples in next couple of slides. Next slide, please. Sanjay, you have to move to next slide, please. Yeah. So this is one example, this is one area which was not thought of as a prolific basin, maybe in mid-90s. And then it suddenly, because of with the new ideas, new technology, things turned around. From zero reserve, now this basin has close to 1.5 billion barrel of recoverable reserve. So if you look at the left-hand map, this is mid-90 scenario. Even the basin was not recognized. Nobody knew that there is a basin like Barmer. Because there was no data. So then initial 2D seismic data really revealed a big rift system, as I have put in the top right-hand side. This is a big rift graben which was established through the acquisition of 2D seismic. And then there was a well drilled in the southern part which discovered a small oil field, and the pessimistic thinking that this basin doesn't have material fields. Materiality is a term you guys will come across many times. Please challenge when somebody says that term. I don't believe in that till I look at the data. So this basin doesn't have materiality in the middle of desert. So the operators who discovered, they left. Some other operator came. I am not naming anybody, but some other operator came. They really thought that moving north in the basin may prove, because that's where they thought that there will be excellent source rock, matured enough. And then they started drilling. They got big oil fields. What was the real surprise is they discovered multi-darcy rock, excellent probability, world-class source rock with world-class reservoir. Now rest is history. You can see in the curve here, from zero here, how the reserve they really jumped. And then there was a flat period because of some of the other issues. Not going to that. Then there was a second campaign taken up recently, and which also, because new players were tested, which also gave some successes. So this is one example that which was not thought of as a good area, suddenly became a prolific area. So please don't discount any area unless you try out new things. I will take another example that there was a established basin. Next slide, please. There was a established basin. Oil and gas was discovered, but and then there was a flat creaming curve, no new ideas, and suddenly when people came with new ideas and technology, suddenly things started moving, and then the reserve figure become 10 times from 1998 to 2005 or 6. 10 times addition of the reserves. So see, this is our very favorite KG basin. So the oil was discovered here in late 70s. I was fortunate to be associated in the initial phase of exploration in this basin. And then I still remember the way we were thinking that the exploration was confined to for next 20 years, primarily in structural traps in Mesozoic and Tertiary. And then you see the incremental gain was very limited. The trimming curve became flat. And then when in early 2000 with the unveil of NELP, the blocks were awarded to other people, so many other people. People came with new plays of tertiary, the bioplays in channel levy complex play, and also the Sindri play, and then big fields were discovered. So you all must be knowing. So this is a case where in the established basin, we saw in the previous slide a new area being opened up with a new thought and some risk-taking ability. And here is a case of established basin the new ideas come with new technology, and this creates fortunes. So next slide, please. So I will just here I will bring, because I was just thinking that what are the new plays which is like this what we saw discovered in India in last maybe 10-15 years. I could gather about 12 new plays by different companies. So all companies have contributed. So out of these, surprisingly, maybe 50%, more than 50% are yet to contribute to production. But they are discovered. The people have recognized the details of each of the plays. So I think, in my opinion, there is a case that these are low-hanging fruits. I think we have to do everything, bring in proper technology concepts, realize the potential of these plays first, and because they have the ability to really contribute substantially to the production. So with all this, I think let's go to some reality check. Next slide, please.
Okay, sir.
This is the reality check. Everything looks good. First, we saw India has a lot of discovered potential and upside potential in terms of resources, 300 billion barrel. We saw some examples how where our own people, many of the people must be attending this conference, and they have made things happen. They have made things happen in several basins. I just gave two examples. And then the geodynamic scenario, India is uniquely positioned in terms of the petroleum resource areas and also the structural styles. But why the licensing status is so low? If you look at this, only 7.5% of the basin area is licensed. Whether it's combined everything, the nomination, then PSC, RSC, OLP, DSF, everything together, production, exploration, 7.5% is licensed. And if you drill down further, the category was one basins, the producing basins, where we should be feeling more confident. So only 17% of the area is licensed. 83% is open. So that talks of the opportunity for the people really to come and explore and establish reserves. Category 2, where we have discoveries but not production, there only 8% area is licensed. So 92% area is still open. So category 3, obviously, it will be far worse. Only 0.4% of the area is licensed. So there is this says there is something. Whether it is really the potential of the basin is low, doesn't appear to be based on what we discussed. Is there an issue of the availability of data for others to look at and make opinion for investing? Is there the issue of the funding? Is there issue of the policy framework, or is it a combination of everything? I think we'll try to analyze this and make some suggestions how we can improve this scenario, because we have no other option than improving the scenario in investing in exploration and then upscaling the tempo more quickly than what we have been doing in the recent past. So next slide, please. So these are basically some of the policy initiatives I think Mr. Gupta has already discussed very nicely, and maybe much more than this. And the fact is, there are some path-breaking initiatives and in terms of policy in the recent past. And much more encouraging is there is willingness to do more. There is a clear intent from the government and the bureaucracy side to do more. So if you ask anything, you have the good chance that that will happen. So there is, so we will see that policy issues are not there. Maybe there are some tidbits here and there we should change, and we will bring those out also. Next slide. Yeah. So first, let us say in exploration what we can do. So the first thing what we have to do is, I think some of my fellow panelists also brought this out, very similar thinking. That first thing is we have to improve the prospectivity perception of our area. So that we have to identify new prospects, new ideas, new plays. And how do you do that? Now each company is doing it in their own way. Is there a case of coming together and doing this as a joint industry study groups, or what they call the GIPs in the outside India. There are several GIPs in the US or many other countries, UK. So is there a case for all the companies coming together? Here, the confidentiality really should not be issue. I think we have to come out of that. Keeping the data confidential to us, it's not going to help anybody. So there is a clear case of coming together, have a discussion, and then coming out with some new ideas. I was also thinking there are so many experts available in India, and there are many people, experts in each basin. And you name, there will be at least 10 people who have so much of knowledge, and why can't we allow them to form startup companies and only for doing data analysis and coming out with new ideas? You can give them data free of cost through India. We have to find out a mechanism. Let them study the data, forming a company, and then probably they can give their ideas free to DGH or whichever company they are working for some period, maybe 1 year, 1.5 years. We can decide. After that, they will be free to market their ideas and make money. So that like that, we will generate new ideas. Also, there will be people who will be interested to come forward. And I suspect there will be people from outside India, our own people who are working, they will also come forward in that. So we have some, like in OLP, we have some petroleum license, we have a reconnaissance license. I think we have to create a study license for this. And then once we do that, once we have a collaborative study groups, we have these new ideas coming from the startups, then together we will have to do massive acreage promotion efforts, that we have to sell our basin outside world, so that other investors also will come with new ideas and all of us will benefit from that. So remaining, there are some suggestions for DGH which I have put in a different color in the right. So there are some entry barriers now, particularly for these small companies. If you look at the world, most of the path-breaking discoveries have been made by small companies when they were small. So like the Talos or Cosmos, or for that matter, Kane, they were not big companies when they made those world-class discoveries. They eventually became big later on, but they were all initially they were all small, because that's where the idea and innovation lies. But in our current framework, I feel there is an entry barrier, because if you charge some financial strength during the bidding stage, many of the small companies won't be even able to participate. So I think I will request the authorities to have a look and to remove some of the entry barriers. Then I just saw that in India there are huge areas classified as no-go, primarily considering the security issues. Yes, security is very important for all of us. National security is paramount. But is there a case that we can work jointly with SOP? Both oil exploration and security can coexist. It has been working in other countries. There are many examples. I think we'll have to take that seriously, so that some good areas are open for exploration. And then, of course, then the northeast states, the vast, very prospective area is locked because of the security and permit issues. And I think we'll have to do something because it has been too far long. Those areas in fold belt, they have not witnessed any exploration or production activities. And then for deep water, I think already Mr. Dhasmana has described, so I will not touch upon. I think there are very good points he has brought. One thing I wanted to bring out, like we have to extend the dispensation of category 2 and 3 to the category 1 deep water. There is no point in treating them differently, because deep water as such is struggling in this low commodity price scenario, and we have to do everything. The first thing we can do is extend those dispensation of category 2 and 3 to category 1 deep water. And then, of course, I will also suggest to go one step further. I brought that point out that there is very less exploration done for Mesozoic and older rocks. I think those dispensations also please extend for the deeper objective in the category 1 basins. So that is how we will really reverse the tempo and enhance the intensity of exploration in India, because only 4% of deep water is licensed. This vast area, and there are already very good similar the plays available which are being chased in elsewhere in the world. They are present in our acreage. So that is one point. The next slide. So then I will touch upon the unconventional stuff. Here I will touch only shale gas. I will not CBM. So shale gas is going to continue as one of the primary source of oil even at 2050. So there is one diagram which is placed in the bottom left. So that shows the contribution of oil production from shale from today to 2050. You can see 40% of the oil in 2050 will come from shale. So if you look at the Indian context, there are some estimates like EIA estimate 2013, which says we have oil potential of 87 billion barrel and gas potential of 548 TCF. So they are even much bigger than the conventional oil estimates what we just discussed. So, but the shale is different. So shale play is different. We'll all have to recognize it. First of all, it doesn't follow a typical process of explore, appraise, develop, and then produce like the conventional oil. It is a cyclic process. You do some work, have a lesson learning from that, and then go for the next cycle. Like I have put in the bottom that graph, you can see instead of one cycle of investment in the conventional, the shale, at least there are 5 cycles of investment. So the cost comes into play. It is much more expensive than the normal oil. And then another thing is the technology. It requires frac. Without fracking, multi-stage fracking, horizontal well, you can't make the shale play happen. And on top of that, the for well deliverability is much lower than the conventional oil, maybe 1/10 of that. So that is where.
Will you please expedite it?
Yeah. So no, I will take 25 minutes. So if you want to reduce that, please tell me. No problem. Otherwise, whoever wants to go for lunch, they can leave. So, but otherwise, there are some few points. Okay, I will try to explain.
Okay, please carry on. Please carry on.
So sale, there is an issue that the economics is affected. So next slide, please. So what happens that we have drilled some 30 wells by the NOCs recently. The data is under analysis. So my point is not about 30 wells. We have hundreds of wells in those basins, KG, Cambe, who is analyzing that in terms of the shale potential. That is very important. That's where the entire industry have to come together, analyze the data, and then identify some sweet spots. And then really the shale revolution will take place as it happened in US. And then the another thing is the policy now what is was announced in 2018. It talks of increasing 10% profit petroleum if you are working for shale in the same acreages. So that's a problem because as I said, it is cost intensive, lower productivity. On top of that, if you expect 10% more profit, it will not work. So we'll have to relook at that. And another point I will just touch in the interest of time is, I think we'll have to look at all our environmental clearance and permitting issues because all our policies are now focused for conventional. We may have to tweak that because shale will require fracking and a lot of water, landforms. So maybe before that issue comes during the execution, we'll have to probably think about that. So next. So then, no, there is, okay. So these are some of the ideas on exploration, but as you know, exploration is little bit medium term. It may take 2 to 7 years for the production being obtained from any exploration efforts what you do now. But till that time, I think there are huge opportunities in our discovered fields. So I'll talk of divide into 3 categories. One is the fields which are not on production. So the fields which are discovered and not on production account for 20% of the in place. So 20% of in place is huge amount of reserve which is locked and idling without any production. And we must do everything possible to bring them on production. So what I was suggesting, maybe this is the case that we have to go now the discovery wise or field wise. What is the problem? Is there issue of the technical complexity in terms of reservoir property or fluid property, or there is no facilities nearby, so that's why they're stranded. There may be various reasons. And once we do that, maybe we have to come out with some very innovative that we should not expect any revenue share or profit coming to government from that. The first objective should be to get production out of this. So instead of a H1 or L1 bid, maybe you go for a lower ask LA bid. So you ask all the companies, okay, you take this field, what you are asking from us, and who is asking the lowest, you give the field from that. And maybe some production link, the incentive, some of my fellow panelists, they brought out. So we have to do this because this is the zero idling of reserves. We can't really allow the reserves to idle any further. Second thing is, next slide please. The second aspect is the tight oil and tight gas. In my estimates, there are 5 billion barrel of in place locked in tight oil, tight gas, which are struggling because of economics. They are not unconventional. They are basically the conventional traps, but their permeability is low. They will require frac. So if you have same policy for a multi-darcy permeability reservoir and a 5 millidarcy reservoir, then these things will struggle, as is happening now. My suggestion will be, please come out with a different policy for conventional, different policy for unconventional, and also a different policy for tight oil and tight gas, because there is substantial amount of oil locked in this. Next slide, please. So finally, the biggest prize is there in the fields which are on production. So 80% of our reserves are in those fields. And if you see, look at, I think there are only the oil, ultimate recovery of oil is 28% and ultimate recovery of gas is 55%. There is a case to enhance this recovery and in terms of production. But if you look at the current recovery of these fields, 50% of the fields have less than 15% of recovery factor at present. So the right-hand side graph will make the things clear. This is only some sample point, not the all fields plotted in that. I am not naming any field or any company who are operating. If you look at, there are some fields are doing very well. The recovery factor at present, this is current recovery factor, is north of 50%, even reaching 60%. Very good. So we should allow these fields to produce the way they want. But the case is, there are some fields where the recovery factor is less than 15, 10, going up to 5. And even after 40 years of production history, maybe 50 years of production history. So there is a urgent need to look at these fields and maybe how to really improve production from these. So next slide, please. So I have some ideas. So the clear thing is, government has done a really good thing by coming out the PC model. But I think we will have to have a relook at the PC model to make it more win-win situation. Maybe signature bonus and revenue share mechanism can work much better to attract more players. Because what we need is technically competent player who will make the things happen. We have to improve the recovery factor. So maybe there are better models about that, but my point is, let us have a serious thinking of changing the model. And another thing is UR. So UR now is considered as a tertiary recovery. I think there is a case that we have to consider UR from day one. So once we have the UR, maybe all the fields don't require, but the fields which seriously require UR, they should not be left being produced only through water flood or depletion. That's not fair. So once we do the UR as a serious thing for all the fields, then there will be serious requirement of trained manpower. There will be serious requirement of services and the companies, and they all should be insourced, sourced from our own country, because always we can't depend on the outside. Yes, there will be some dependency, but better to develop our own supply industry by maybe giving some dispensation to them, like deferred tax regime, or changing the procurement process, because many of these small players, they can't even participate in the bidding because of lack of experience or financial muscle. And then in terms of manpower, then we'll have to train our people in the universities and handle the universities in creating facilities because we require a lot of persons for handling the OR. So the producing fields two ideas, revising the PEC model and then really focusing on UR. I think those are some of the ideas what I had. I have one slide. Next slide, please. Okay, this conclusion I have already spoken. There is no need. Chalo sir, if you allow me 1 minute, I have one more slide just to focus. Is it okay or I will stop here?
Please go.
Yeah. Okay, next slide, please. So purposefully, I kept this slide. Unfortunately, it's a PDF version. I won't be able to explain properly. So for a success of any ENP venture, what you need? Four things. One is the property. So that is the basins. So basically, you should have working petroleum system and you should have access. And we have both in India. We have huge acreage and it should be a perspective. Then you need people. So the people means you should have experience and then the culture and then the partnership. Then you need to have luck and then you have the process. The process means the policy. So I consider now we are creating a ecosystem for in terms of property. We have the process in terms of policy that is in place or getting better. And lock factor we should not bother. We can't control that. But I am a bit worried about the people. So with all this is happening, are the universities really doing well in terms of getting the students? Because they will need them in future. So that is the point. I mean, that's why I wanted to discuss this slide. So that we have the entire ecosystem for the ENP industry really to take off from here and then to cater to the requirement what we they need in the 2050. I think I must thank all of you to bear with me to taking more time than probably required. And then thanks the organizing committee again to give me a chance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mahapatra. Now we have finished all the presentation. We have few question and answers. So there are basically many questions, but 2-3 questions I have forwarded to Mr. Anand Gupta. So if Mr. Anand Gupta can reply on those questions.
Thank you, Chawla ji. Thanks to all the panelists and good presentations and good amount of information shared. I think what I understood from the first point, there was a view with respect to the NOC participation. So NOCs are already allowed; they are participating. In fact, I feel that they have much bigger challenge through their systems and participate in the very various processes. That is their second part was with respect to the I think telling that renewables are going to take this. I think they are more and more getting promoted. So that is definitely there because considering the climate change and all kinds of things which are coming up. But I think in the last presentation, Mr. Mohapatra has clearly brought out that the demand is going to continue. And as a country till 2050, our demand is going to increase. I had already shared with respect to the gas and oil requirement. So it is very important that we produce more and towards the Honorable Prime Minister's objective and the government overall objective of Bharat. And I think the third point was with respect to the unconventional resources. So for unconventional resources, as has been brought out, there are different estimates which have been put together by different agencies. So at this point of time, it's not right for me to bring out what is right, what is wrong, and they are quite varying unconventional resources numbers what has been put. But definitely a study is being planned, which I had mentioned in my slides. So this 2021 study will address that, and I think we will have a better numbers. So I think it will be better if those numbers from the official resource officially are quoted at that point of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta. Mr. Amar, Joint Secretary Exploration, was to be here in the final session, but he had to join another meeting at 1 p.m. So he has conveyed his best compliments to all the presenters, Dr. Gupta, Mr. Dhasmana, Mr. Rajiv Kumar, and Mr. Mahapatra. So many suggestions have been brought in by the industry player, and Mr. Gupta has also given his overview on the way forward and what are the policy changes have been brought by the government. So, Joint Secretary Exposition has also mentioned that, as was mentioned in the inaugural session also, that differently, first time we are doing it, that a monitoring committee is being constituted, which will review and give his recommendation to the government in terms of what are the actionable points coming out of all the sessions. So all many suggestions have been in this particular session. Many suggestions have been given by Mr. Dhasmana, Mr. Rajiv Kumar, and Mr. Mapatra from the industry side. So all those actionable points will be compiled and put up to this monitoring committee, and then will be definitely will be deliberated at length. So with these words, so once again, many compliments to all the presenters from my side, from chairman of the session. Thank you very much. So with this, we conclude this session. Mr. Gupta, you want to say anything?
No, I think it has been very useful. And as I mentioned in the beginning, the team consisting of me from the ministry side, from our side, and then from the NOC side, and then private sector, all were there. And it's good that actually the appreciation for all the sides are there. I mean, as industry and as government, both have to appreciate each other if the teamwork is to be delivered. And there is good potential. After reaching here, I've also seen that good facilitation can definitely help the industry to move forward. So I think all the very best to everybody, and let's hope. And as I mentioned in the beginning, that we are seeing the outcome in terms of improvement in production. I think that is the final outcome, which is the most important at the end of the day. The exploration people and everybody puts effort, but finally the production, the realization is most important thing. So I think that's coming up, and hope, as I mentioned, that this gas scenario definitely is looking quite brighter with the projects coming up, and which is being delivered at this difficult time. And great appreciation to the industry, and we will try to do whatever best possible. So again, on behalf of BG Sub, on behalf of BGH and the ministry, which the Chawla is present, thank you everybody, and thank you for organizing the organizing committee for putting such a good show together and bringing everybody together at this place. I understand, I've been told I'm still adding more than 7,500 people are participating. So that itself is showing that it's a so-called mega event in terms of, I think I'm told that OTC almost some 8,000-9,000 people participate physically. So at least you are reaching close to them in terms of virtual participation. So thank you very much from my side. All the very best to everybody.
So thank you very much to all the participants and the audience. So I hand over to social friendly Mr. Gentleman. Yes.
Thank you so much, everyone, for that rather fruitful discussion. It was indeed an exhaustive discussion with so much the esteemed speakers and the panelists. Thank you so much. Well, we will now break for lunch, and we shall commence the session again at 2 p.m. And during the lunch break, we have a very, very special musician with us. There is a sarod recital by Shri Sham Panja, accompanied by Shri Arpan Bhattacharji on the tabla. Shri Sayam Panja is one of the foremost disciple of Sarod Maestro Pandit Alok Lahiri and a B-high artist of Sarod at All India Radio. He started his musical journey with the guidance of his musically inclined parents, Shri Gautam Panja and Srimati Suparna Panja. Sayam Panja performed in many honorable platforms like Bhavanipur Sangeet Sammilan, Kolkata, Golpo Dadur Asur of All India Radio, Kolkata in 2007, Jal Sanghar Parampara at Tara Music TV channel, Maulana Abdul Kalam Azad Institute of Asian Studies, Kolkata in 2014, World Culture Festival organized by Art of Living in 2016 in New Delhi. He has also successfully performed at the EZCC and ICCR, both organization of Government of India, as a part of Sur Sangam instrumental ensemble, an ensemble created by Guru Pandit Alok Lahiri. He also performed along with his guru Pandit Alok Lahiri in Birbhum, Kolkata and Delhi, and with Guru Putra Pandit Abhilash Lahiri in Cyprus and Morocco. So may I present the stage for Shri Sayam Punjab for his musical extravaganza.